Zodiac Killer, a timeline. In July 1969, a bizarre letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner, containing chilling and haunting words, "I like killing people because it's so much fun." These were the words of the Zodiac Killer, a notorious serial killer, a ghost who haunted Northern California during the late 1960s and early 1970s. This statement not only sent a shiver down people's spines but became a symbol of the cruelty and madness the killer embodied. The Zodiac Killer was no ordinary murderer. His crimes were not just killings but psychological games that haunted both the police and the public. Each of his murders was accompanied by letters filled with cryptic codes, unsolvable ciphers, and threats that still remain incomprehensible to this day. This is why the case has remained unsolved for over 50 years. He killed at least 5 people, though according to his own words, the true number of victims could be as high as 37. His brutal attacks were carried out randomly and illogically, with victims having no apparent connection to one another, making all theories perplexing. No one could predict who he would kill next, or why. A complex and mysterious killer. The Zodiac was not just a murderer. He was a symbol of madness, an enigma whose criminal psychology is impossible to explain. Why did he do it? Was it the thrill of taking lives? Or was there a deeper psychological reason that he never revealed? These questions remain unanswered, and it is this ambiguity that adds to the terror of the case. The murders committed by the Zodiac always came with strange details, such as his sending letters filled with ciphers to the police and the media, or making phone calls claiming to be the killer. He did not hide his existence but rather challenged the police and the public to decode the messages he sent. Some of the ciphers in his letters remain unsolved, making us wonder about his intelligence and patience. The sense of fear and obsession. What makes the Zodiac so terrifying is not just the murders he committed, but the way he made people feel powerless. He didn't just kill, he played with the public's fear. The letters he sent to the media, with eerie words and codes that no one could decipher, seemed like a game he controlled, making everyone feel like prey in the hands of a clever and malicious individual. Because of these letters, the Zodiac case became an unsolvable puzzle. Despite numerous studies, theories, and efforts from the police, criminal analysts, and cryptographers, the identity of the Zodiac remains a mystery. Could he be just a normal killer, or is there a deeper, more bizarre reason behind his actions? An everlasting presence. For the victims, investigators, and the public, the Zodiac case continues to haunt. More than 50 years have passed, and all traces of him have faded with time, but the story of the Zodiac Killer remains an unsolved mystery. It is not just a case, but has become part of popular culture, appearing in countless books, films, and social media discussions. Therefore, although no one can answer the question of the Zodiac's true identity, his crimes remain an important part of criminal history, a lesson in criminal psychology, and a challenge that a killer can pose to society. And for all these years, we continue to search for the answer to the one question: who is the Zodiac Killer? The first murder, Lake Herman Road. The story of the Zodiac Killer begins on a cold December night in 1968, when 2 teenagers, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, chose Lake Herman Road, a secluded area in Benicia, California, for their first date. This was a quiet, little-traveled road, perfect for couples seeking privacy. At the time, no one could have predicted that this would be the location of the first murder, which would later become the starting point for the Zodiac's subsequent crimes. Around 11 p.m., the couple was sitting in their car, a Rambler, when they were attacked by an unknown assailant. The motive of the killer was unclear at the time, but what followed created a deep scar in the minds of the public and police. David Faraday, shot in the head, died instantly. Betty Lou Jensen, sitting beside him, was also not spared, being shot in the back. The killer didn't just murder them but also carried out a very peculiar act. He shot them from outside the car before demanding they step out. Strange details. When the police arrived at the scene, notable details began to surface. Both victims had been shot multiple times, with Betty Lou being shot in the back and David in the head. One of the significant points was the bullet marks. The bullets found at the scene showed signs that they had been fired from outside the car. This led the police to speculate that the killer might have shot into the car before ordering the victims to step outside. This was an odd detail, as usually, murderers don't act in such a way unless there's a specific reason. The act of ordering the victims out of the car could have been deliberate, to create a situation where the killer had full control. It might also indicate his arrogance and desire to assert power. The killer didn't just commit horrific acts but also left clues that showed he had a strange and calculated mindset. The shell casings collected from the scene indicated they were Winchester Western Super X rounds, a type of ammunition that would later be confirmed as the one Zodiac used in subsequent murders. This is an important point, as it links the first case to the later killings committed by the Zodiac, leading investigators to suspect that the Lake Herman Road case was one of the Zodiac's early murders, though it wasn't definitively identified at the time. Another detail was the discovery of shell casings that could suggest the killer had been well prepared and knew how to cover his tracks. Furthermore, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance, leading criminal analysts to speculate that the killer had planned the attack and did not act impulsively. Initial theories. From the beginning, the case left investigators puzzled, raising many questions. Was this a random act of violence, a murder driven by hatred or jealousy, or was it a planned act by a purposeful killer? One initial theory was that this could have been a random murder, as the couple, Betty Lou and David, were just two ordinary teenagers with no apparent connections to anyone. However, as more details emerged, suspicions about the killer's motive began to rise. The fact that he chose a secluded location and carried out the murder with such calculation led analysts to suspect that the killer wasn't acting impulsively but might have planned it in advance. Additionally, the use of Winchester Super X rounds, which would later be linked to other murders by the Zodiac, created a significant connection between the cases. This raised the question, had Zodiac intended to kill from the start, or was this an uncontrollable act of rage? Or was it that he had carefully prepared for this first murder, just like the later killings? The question, was it a random act of violence? Or did Zodiac already have his sights set on these two teenagers, remains unanswered, but the Lake Herman Road case undoubtedly marked the beginning of the horrific crimes that would follow in the years to come. The strange and incomprehensible details surrounding this murder were merely the first signs of a terrifying ghost lurking in the shadows, a killer who would continue to haunt and confuse everyone for many years. The first murder of Zodiac at Lake Herman Road opened the door to a series of terrifying and inexplicable events. The strange details, along with the way he committed the crime, made people reflect on the killer's motive and true nature. Zodiac was not an ordinary murderer. He was a calculating figure, a psychological game player who was terrifyingly cold and methodical. The next murders and the development of Zodiac. Since the first murder on Lake Herman Road, Zodiac Killer's attacks became not only more brutal but also included more frightening and puzzling details, making each subsequent case increase fear and confusion. His actions were no longer as simple as a random murder, but rather became more intentional, calculated, and extremely bizarre. Blue Rock Springs Park, 1969. On the night of July 4, 1969, Zodiac continued his crimes at Blue Rock Springs Park, a secluded parking lot in Vallejo, California. This time, his targets were Darlene Ferrin, a young mother and waitress, and her boyfriend Michael Mageau. The two had driven into the parking lot to enjoy a quiet evening. However, this evening would not end peacefully as they had hoped. Zodiac approached their Corvair and suddenly attacked them with a gun. He pulled out a 9mm pistol and mercilessly shot at them. Darlene Ferrin was killed instantly, while Michael Mageau was shot in the jaw, shoulder, and thigh but fortunately survived. Before the police could arrive, a chilling phone call was made from a nearby payphone. A chilling phone call was made to the police soon after, where the killer calmly described the murder. In the call, the killer, claiming to be Zodiac, calmly described the murder in detail. He announced that he was the one responsible for the previous attack on Lake Herman Road and that he had now attacked the couple at Blue Rock Springs. Through this call, Zodiac once again demonstrated his arrogance and cruelty. He didn't just kill, but played games with the authorities, challenging them to decipher his actions and continuing to instill fear in the community. The details in this phone call were not just a simple confession but a challenge to the police and the public. He did not hide his identity but rather took pleasure in creating panic and fear. This highlights a significant aspect of Zodiac's psyche. He not only wanted to kill but also wanted to assert his power and control over every situation. Lake Berryessa, 1969. By September of the same year, Zodiac committed one of his most haunting murders in his crime spree. The attack at Lake Berryessa, a lake near Napa, California, occurred on a beautiful weekend day, when college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were relaxing by the shore. Little did they know they would become the targets of a meticulously planned killer. Zodiac suddenly appeared and overpowered them. He wore a bizarre outfit, a long coat with a large cross embroidered on the chest, a symbol that would later become his trademark. He claimed to be a fugitive from prison and demanded money and a car to escape to Mexico. He then bound their hands with plastic ties, an action that showed his meticulous preparation and calculation. Zodiac did not attack his victims with a gun this time but used a large knife to stab them. Brian Hartnell was stabbed 6 times, and Cecilia Shepard was stabbed 10 times while trying to resist. After committing the crime, Zodiac did not rush away but returned to the scene to leave his mark. He wrote a message on Brian Hartnell's car, using his trademark cross and adding information about previous cases. This act clearly showed that Zodiac was not just a killer, but someone who enjoyed playing games with the police and the public. He challenged everyone to decode his symbols, sending the message that he was still there, waiting to commit more horrific acts. Indeed, the attack at Lake Berryessa elevated Zodiac to a new level in creating fear. Not only did he kill in a brutal manner, but he also left threatening and challenging marks, clearly demonstrating the terrifying psyche of someone who not only wanted to kill but also wanted to play psychological games with the victims and the police. From these attacks, we can see a clear development in Zodiac's behavior. Initially, at Lake Herman Road, he simply killed ruthlessly. However, with each subsequent murder, it became evident that he was becoming more arrogant, mad, and displaying clear control over the attacks. Zodiac was not just a killer, he was an intellectual, adept at playing games with the authorities and the public. His sending of letters with ciphers, making calm phone calls, and leaving bizarre marks at crime scenes show that he had a need to be recognized and acknowledged. The challenges he sent through his actions demonstrated that he not only sought satisfaction from his murders but also from playing with the intelligence and psychological manipulation of those around him. Each murder Zodiac committed had its own unique characteristics and shared one common element: it was a challenge and a game with those searching for him. The murders at Blue Rock Springs and Lake Berryessa helped us better understand his motives and psychology, not just a heartless killer, but someone who enjoyed playing psychological games, someone who saw himself as having power and always found ways to assert control over both the victims and the police. From here, Zodiac's later attacks would become even more complex and mysterious, continuing to haunt not only the victims but the entire community. The mysterious letters of Zodiac. Since Zodiac began his gruesome killings, he not only instilled fear through his actions but also through the bizarre letters he sent to the press and the police. These letters were not merely confessions, but contained cryptic messages, challenges, and threats. Each of his letters carried its own psychological power, designed to make the reader feel confused and unsettled. Zodiac didn't just send a few letters, he sent a series of messages, each containing challenges, strange demands, and codes that no one could decipher. He sent these letters to major newspapers, including the San Francisco Chronicle, the Los Angeles Times, and even the police. His letters were not only an attempt to satisfy his need for recognition but also a way for him to manipulate the public's and authorities' psychology. One of the most infamous and haunting letters from Zodiac was sent in July 1969, in which he wrote, "I like killing people because it's so much fun." This statement not only affirmed the brutal nature of the killer but also showed his lack of emotion and indifference toward human life. He did not express remorse or fear, but rather seemed to revel in the pain and chaos he created. These words are a testament to the darkness in Zodiac's mind. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to assert his power through each victim. In addition to threats, Zodiac sent complex ciphers, demanding the police decode them to reveal hidden information. This wasn't just a mental challenge, it was also a way for him to showcase his intelligence and superiority. These ciphers became a key part of the Zodiac story, and to this day, some of his codes remain unsolved. Analyzing the peculiarities in the letters. Why did Zodiac send these letters? Was it simply an attempt to boast about his cryptographic skills and intelligence, or was there a deeper motivation related to controlling the situation? The answer isn't simple, but it's clear that each letter had a distinct purpose. One reason Zodiac sent these letters was to create a sense of control. He wasn't just an anonymous killer, he was someone who wanted to dominate. Sending letters, especially those full of encryption, showed that he was challenging the police, the public, and society at large. These letters were not just meant to announce his existence but to make him feel powerful. He knew people were looking for him, and by causing confusion and panic, he amplified his strength. Furthermore, these letters may reflect a psychological void in Zodiac. When killers seek attention or recognition from society, they often engage in actions like sending letters to the press. Zodiac might have felt a lack of recognition in his personal life, and sending these letters was his way of getting attention, being acknowledged, and feeling important. Criminal psychologists suggest that individuals like Zodiac often have an extremely strong need for recognition and control, and these letters were his way of expressing that need. The challenge. One of the most notable features of Zodiac's letters was the challenge he sent to the authorities. He didn't simply confess his crimes but created intricate games, daring everyone to decode his messages. The codes he included in his letters weren't just simple encryptions, they were a way for Zodiac to control the investigation. This challenge wasn't just a game of intellect, it was a method for Zodiac to assert his superiority. By sending codes and demanding authorities to decipher them, he was trying to prove that he could outsmart them. Moreover, he sent the message that he would always be there, always in the shadows, and no one would ever catch him. These messages only heightened public and police fear, as they weren't just facing a killer but a mind full of cunning and elusiveness. In fact, it's clear that sending these difficult ciphers was part of the psychological game Zodiac created. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to make others feel weak, confused, and defeated. The fact that authorities couldn't completely decode his messages further increased the bewilderment and frustration within the community. This clearly showed that Zodiac wasn't just a murderer, he was someone who thrived on causing chaos and manipulating psychology. The impact of Zodiac's letters. Zodiac's letters caused a wave of panic and fear throughout the community. His correspondence not only left the police directionless but also made the public feel as though they were being watched, controlled by an invisible ghost. The messages in his letters didn't just reveal the brutality of the killer but also reflected an insanity, a perplexing aspect of his psychological makeup. These letters became a part of the legacy Zodiac left behind. They weren't just a part of the cases but also a symbol of chaos and cruelty. Each letter wasn't just a confession but also a message sent to society. Zodiac was not just a simple killer, but a game player, a manipulator, someone controlling the entire narrative. Zodiac's letters weren't simply confessions or strange demands. They were messages reflecting the psychology of a calculated killer who took pleasure in manipulating and controlling. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to make everyone feel confused, fail at deciphering his clues, and struggle to confront him. Each letter was a part of the psychological game he created, challenging everyone and asserting his power in the investigation. It was these letters that allowed the Zodiac case to continue haunting the public and remain an unforgettable part of criminal history. Unconfirmed murders and suspicion. Although the Zodiac Killer is officially linked to 5 murders, throughout his crime spree, he consistently hinted that he had committed many more murders that had not been discovered. These unconfirmed murders not only made the police's job harder but also added to the mystery and tension surrounding the killer. From the Riverside murder to the attacks in Modesto, the suspicions surrounding Zodiac only heightened the anxiety in the community, with unresolved theories making the case even more complex. Riverside, 1966. One of the first murders that might be related to Zodiac was the killing of Sharijo Bates, an 18-year-old student in Riverside, California, in 1966. Although the police at the time couldn't confirm any connection between this case and Zodiac, many details in the murder had clear similarities to later attacks by the killer. Sharijo Bates was attacked and killed near Riverside City College. She was stabbed multiple times, and her throat was slashed, methods that Zodiac would later apply in his other murders. Strangely, about a month after the murder, letters began to be sent to the press and the police, with the killer claiming responsibility. These letters had a style very similar to the ones Zodiac would later send, with threats and taunting remarks. In these letters, the writer stated, "Miss Bates was stupid. She went to the slaughter like a lamb," and added, "I am not sick. I am insane." These words not only displayed the madness of the killer but also showed his self-satisfaction and delight in asserting his identity. Investigators later linked Sharijo Bates' murder to Zodiac, but to this day, there has not been enough evidence to officially connect the case to him. Modesto area, 1967. Another significant attack that many believe could involve Zodiac took place in 1967, when Kathleen Johns, a pregnant woman, was attacked near Modesto, California. Kathleen, who was driving alone, was stopped by a stranger who told her to pull over because her car was having trouble. When she stopped, the stranger loosened her wheel, causing it to fall off when she tried to drive away. As Kathleen attempted to seek help, the stranger forced her into his car and seemed intent on attacking her. She fought back and jumped out of the car with her unborn child, only managing to escape thanks to a passing driver. After being taken to the police station, she identified the stranger through a sketch provided by the authorities. Notably, in later letters, Zodiac mentioned a rather interesting ride with a woman and child, leading many to believe that this attack may have been connected to him. Unverified theories. Over the years, many researchers and criminal experts have put forward theories suggesting that Zodiac could have been involved in many other murders that remain unconfirmed. While police have only officially linked him to 5 murders, his actions and continuous letters suggest that the true number of victims could be much higher. His persistent sending of letters challenging the police and the public has created an ongoing tension and mystery, making people feel as though he was still watching and playing games with the authorities. One reason why Zodiac might have killed more people is because he constantly wanted to prove that he could act without getting caught. The encrypted letters he sent to major newspapers weren't just a way for him to gloat, they also proved he could manipulate the authorities. His ability to remain free despite committing numerous murders only boosted his confidence, prompting him to continue making threats. Could Zodiac have killed more than we know? Did he continue to taunt the police with his cryptic letters, or did he quietly disappear? These questions have no definitive answers. However, it is clear that Zodiac didn't just kill, he also created psychological games through his letters, causing both the police and the public to feel uneasy. The challenging letters, the unsolved ciphers, and the threatening words made the Zodiac case one of the greatest mysteries in criminal history. Many believe that Zodiac may have continued killing after his prominent attacks, but no concrete evidence has ever been found. The unconfirmed murders remain theories, but Zodiac's actions and correspondence still haunt us today, leaving everyone wondering if he's still out there, unapprehended and hiding in the shadows. The biggest question remains, did Zodiac truly stop, or did he continue committing murders that we don't know about? Did he keep sending letters that we have yet to find, or did he simply disappear into the darkness with cunning? Either way, the murders of Zodiac have left their mark not only in the confirmed cases but also in the unresolved suspicions. Although only 5 murders are officially confirmed, the appearance of unconfirmed attacks and bizarre letters has created a complex and ambiguous picture of Zodiac. Investigators continue to speculate about undiscovered cases and whether Zodiac truly stopped killing or if he kept going. These suspicions remain, adding to the ongoing mystery surrounding this serial killer. After a series of brutal murders and a string of cryptic letters, the Zodiac Killer left the nation in a state of fear and confusion. This case was not just about the murders themselves but also a psychological puzzle full of mystery. Despite numerous efforts by authorities and experts over several decades, the true identity of the Zodiac remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history. The Zodiac Killer did the unimaginable. He killed in a cold and ruthless manner, sending threatening and coded letters that forced the public and the police to chase after him for years. But despite all these efforts, he vanished by the late 1970s, like a ghost that could not be caught. No further murders were confirmed after that, and no new information emerged regarding his identity. Still, the obsession with the case continues, as discussions and theories about Zodiac's identity are raised every day. The end of the case. After years of chaos from horrifying murders to mysterious letters, the Zodiac Killer suddenly disappeared. His cases not only left the police struggling to resolve them but also undermined the public's trust in the ability of the legal system to ensure security. The killings were swift and brutal, and all efforts to track him down failed to yield clear results. Although there was no trace leading to the Zodiac's disappearance, his legacy has not faded. From his haunting attacks to the strange letters, Zodiac has left an indelible mark on criminal history. Later crimes copied by other killers, books, TV shows, and films inspired by the case have proven that Zodiac's identity and actions continue to make the world think and discuss. Will we ever know who the Zodiac Killer truly was? Or will his identity remain shrouded in mystery forever? This question remains an unsolved mystery. Although many decades have passed and investigators have used every modern technological means to identify the killer, the Zodiac Killer remains a ghost that no one can catch. Will we ever know who was behind these brutal murders? Or will he forever be part of an unsolved story? Perhaps we will never know the true identity of Zodiac, or perhaps he will only remain a part of an unfinished tale. But one thing is certain, this case will continue to live on in the minds of researchers and those still searching for the answer to the greatest question in criminal history.